The first night I found the house, the streetlights were doing that thing they do in bad neighborhoods, flickering like they couldn't decide whether to help or pretend not to see. My shoes were wet all the way through, not just damp, soaked, squishing, peeling heat out of my feet with every step. I'd been walking since the sun went down, carrying everything I owned in a bag that used to be white but now looked like it had just given up. When you're a runaway, you learn the city by its shadows. You learn which corners have the kind of men who watch you like a problem they can solve. You learn which gas stations chase you off even if you've got money. You learn which alley smells like piss and which one smells like bleach, because bleach means somebody is trying to keep it clean, and clean means somebody is paying attention. And you learn fast that there are two kinds of nights: the nights you make it through and the nights you don't. That night felt like the second kind. I hadn't eaten since morning. I'd tried the usual places, the bakery that would sell yesterday's stuff for pennies, the convenience store where sometimes the cashier would pretend not to see me slip a hot dog. But the bakery was closed. The cashier at the convenience store was new, and new people don't have mercy. So I kept moving. That's how I ended up on a street I didn't usually walk on. Too quiet, too clean, the kind of place where the lawns looked like they had rules. And that's when I saw it. At the end of the block, set back behind overgrown bushes like it was trying to hide. The yard was a mess. You could tell that someone had once cared, but then stopped. The porch light was dead. The curtains were gone from the front windows. There was a for sale sign in the dirt, but it was tilted like it had been kicked. Abandoned, my brain said immediately. Or close enough. I stood across the street and watched it like it was a living animal that might suddenly turn its head and look back. I listened for dogs, for TV noise, for a car door, anything that said someone is inside. Nothing. My stomach cramped. My hands were shaking, half from cold, half from the simple fact that fear is a kind of hunger too. I told myself I was only going to check the back door, only going to see if it was open, only going to step inside for a minute to warm up and then leave. That's the lie you tell yourself when your choices are all bad. I moved down the side of the house, staying in the shadow of the hedges. A branch snagged my hair and tugged hard enough to sting. I bit my lip to keep from making a sound. In the back, the yard was worse. Tools scattered, old boards leaning against a fence, a roll of insulation wrapped in plastic like a giant sleeping bag. A construction dumpster sat near the driveway. The smell back there wasn't empty house. It was sawdust and paint. My stomach dropped. Renovation. I froze, staring at the dumpster, at the boards, at the footprints in the dirt. Someone had been here, recently. I should have turned around right then. I should have backed away and gone back to the streets and taken my chances with everything out there that wanted to eat me alive. But the back door, old, wood, swollen at the bottom, wasn't fully latched. It was just not shut. A sliver of darkness waited inside, like the house was holding its breath. My fingers touched the knob, cold metal. I pushed, slow, until the door sighed open. The air inside hit me like a wall, stale, dusty, but warmer than the night. A strange mix of old house smell and fresh primer. I stepped in, then pulled the door almost closed behind me, leaving it cracked the way I'd found it. For a second, I just stood there, letting my eyes adjust. My ears rang with the silence. Then my body remembered what warmth felt like. I sank onto the floor right there in the kitchen, back against a cabinet with no doors, and tried not to cry from relief. Because there's a certain kind of relief that comes with shame attached to it. I knew I wasn't supposed to be here. But I also knew if I went back outside, I might not make it to morning. Upstairs, the floor creaked when I tested it with my foot. The house was half stripped, baseboards pulled away, carpet gone in places. pale rectangles on the walls where pictures had once hung. The banister was dusty, like nobody had run their hands along it in a long time. I found a bedroom at the back with no door. The window was covered in plastic that flapped slightly when the wind hit it, whispering. There was a pile of old blankets in the corner, maybe left behind, maybe meant for insulation. I didn't care. I crawled into them like they were a nest. I told myself I'd rest for an hour, just 1 hour. Then I'd leave before anyone came. My eyelids barely closed before the world tilted. Sleep grabbed me like it had been waiting. I woke to the sound of a truck door slamming. My eyes snapped open so fast it hurt. For a second, I didn't know where I was, and then my brain caught up. House, break-in, renovation, men. Footsteps outside, voices, laughing, the clank of something metal, tools. Panic flooded my chest, hot and instant. I scrambled to the window and tilted a corner of the plastic just enough to look through. In the driveway below, a work truck idled. 2 men stood near the back, pulling out ladders and a toolbox. They moved like they belonged here, like this was just another Tuesday for them. One of them wore a beanie and had a cigarette tucked behind his ear. The other had a bright orange sweatshirt and the kind of shoulders that filled it. They walked towards the front door. I pressed my hand to my mouth. The front door opened. Then the sound of them inside, footsteps on wood, voices echoing up the stairwell. I backed away from the window, my heart banging so hard I thought it might give me away. I looked around the room like there might be a trap door or a closet or something magical that would erase me. Of course, there was nothing. The blankets, the dust, my bag. I snatched my bag and shoved it behind a leaning piece of drywall, then pulled the blankets over the spot where I'd slept, trying to make it look untouched. My movements were frantic, stupid, loud. Downstairs, one of the men coughed. Then I heard it, heavy footsteps on the stairs. My blood turned to ice. Someone was coming up. I darted into the next room, a smaller one with bare walls and a single window, and I crouched behind a stack of wood trim. The trim smelled like pine and fresh cut, sharp in my nose. The footsteps reached the top landing and paused. Then the man walked down the hall. I could see his boots through the gap in the trim pile, work boots with dried mud on the edges. He stopped at the doorway of the bedroom I'd been in. I held my breath so hard my vision shimmered. He didn't come in, he just stood there. My stomach clenched. He shifted his weight, the floor creaked. I thought, this is it. This is where he sees the blankets wrong, the drywall moved, the little sign of me. But after a second, he just said, and the boots turned away. Footsteps down the hall, then back down the stairs. I stayed frozen behind the trim pile until my legs started to cramp and my teeth began to chatter. When the voices downstairs got louder again, normal, joking, talking about measurements, I let out the smallest breath. I was still here. I shouldn't have been relieved, but I was. That day, I learned the house's rhythm. They worked downstairs, kitchen, living room, the bathroom near the back. They played a radio sometimes. They ate lunch on the porch, and they left around late afternoon. When they were here, I stayed upstairs. When they left, I crept down like a ghost and found water in the old pipes, cold from the tap. I used the bathroom carefully. I ate small portions of food they left behind, apples, chips, and when I couldn't stand my stomach gnawing at itself, I snuck out the back and hit the gas station for a cheap burrito, then came back before dark. I told myself I'd only do it one more night, then another, because outside the nights were getting colder and the streets were always mean. And inside this half-renovated house, there was at least a roof. It became a cat and mouse game I didn't ask for but couldn't stop playing. I listened for their truck each morning like it was a siren. When I heard it, I'd go still. When they laughed, I knew they weren't looking too hard. When they were quiet, when I heard drawers open, cabinets slam, footsteps pause in strange places, those were the moments I held my breath so long my ribs ached. Sometimes they'd come upstairs to check something, measure a window, pull up old nails, talk about replacing a door frame. Those were the days my hands would shake so badly I couldn't even open my bag without making a noise. Once, the beanie guy came up and stepped into the hallway right outside the room I hid most. He stood there, looking down the hall like he was thinking. I watched his shadow, waiting for it to stretch toward me. He called down, "Hey, Tony!" "Yeah?" came Orange Sweatshirt's voice. "You ever see footprints up here?" My throat closed. A long pause. Then Tony replied, "It's an old house, man. Probably been squatters." Beanie guy grunted, "Yeah." He walked away, and I nearly collapsed. But the question stayed lodged in my mind like a splinter. Footprints. He was noticing. I started to move more carefully. I stopped using the bathroom upstairs. I stopped touching anything I didn't have to. I started sleeping in a different room each night, like maybe that would make me invisible. The problem with trying to be invisible is that it becomes a full-time job, and I was already exhausted. One afternoon, I came back from the gas station with a bruised apple and a bag of chips, and I realized I'd forgotten something. My bag upstairs, behind the drywall. If I didn't get it before they returned the next morning, I'd be stuck with nothing. So I waited until the sun went down and the streetlights started to flicker again, and then I crept inside and went upstairs. The house was quiet, too quiet. I moved carefully, bare feet this time, stepping where the boards didn't creak. I reached the bedroom and slid my bag out from behind the drywall. And that's when the floor below me groaned. Not a creak, a step. My heart stopped. Voices muffled from downstairs. A flashlight beam swept across the wall at the end of the hallway, white light slicing through darkness. Someone was inside. I froze, bag half out, drywall scraping softly against the floor. The flashlight beam paused, then moved again, faster. A man's voice called, "Hello?" Another voice, deeper. "Tony, you hear that?" My brain screamed at me to run, but where? The window was covered in plastic. The stairs were a wide-open death trap. The flashlight beam came closer, sliding across the wallpaper, catching dust in the air like tiny stars. I shoved my bag behind me and backed into the corner of the bedroom. The doorway filled with light, and then a silhouette. Beanie guy. He stepped in, flashlight held up, his face half lit, half shadow. His eyes landed on me. For a full second, the world locked. He didn't yell. He didn't rush me. He just stared like his brain was trying to make sense of the fact that I existed. Then he said, "Holy..." "Don't," I blurted, my voice breaking. "Please don't. I'm not doing anything." He lowered the flashlight slightly, but he didn't turn it off. Tony appeared behind him, bigger, orange sweatshirt glowing in the light like a warning sign. He looked past Beanie and saw me, and his face changed. Surprise first, then something like concern, then irritation. "Jesus," Tony said. "Kid, what are you doing here?" I hugged my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how thin my jacket was, how dirty my hair must look, how my hands shook like I was made of paper. I thought it was empty. Beanie guy snorted softly. "It's not empty. It's a job site." Tony kept his voice controlled, like he was trying hard not to scare me. "How long you been here?" My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because admitting the truth felt dangerous. Like if I said days, they'd call the cops. Like if I said nights, they'd think I'd stolen something. Like if I said I had nowhere else, it would make me sound pathetic, and pity is just another kind of power. Beanie Guy watched me closely. You got family? I flinched. Tony sighed. Okay, look, we're not trying to mess you up, but we can't have you in here. If something happens, if you get hurt, if tools go missing or the owner finds out, we get blamed. I nodded so fast my neck hurt. I know, I'm sorry. I'll go right now. Beanie Guy shifted, scratching the back of his neck. You hungry? The question cracked something inside me. I hated that my eyes filled instantly. I hated that my throat tightened like my body was betraying me. Tony's face softened, just a little. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He took out a couple of bills, crumpled but real. He held them out. Here, he said, get some food. And don't come back here, okay? Not because we're mad, because this is trouble, for you and for us. I stared at the money like it was a trick, like if I took it there'd be strings, like kindness always came with a price. Beanie Guy said quietly, It's okay, just take it. So I did. My fingers brushed Tony's as I grabbed the bills, and I expected him to flinch or pull away like people usually did when they touched me. He didn't. He just pointed toward the stairs. Back door is safer. Go slow. I picked up my bag and moved past them like a shadow again, except this time they could see me. At the top of the stairs, I paused. I don't know why. Maybe because some part of me wanted to say something that proved I was still human. Thank you, I whispered. Tony nodded once. Beanie Guy gave a small, awkward wave like he didn't know what to do with his hands. I went down the stairs, every step loud in my ears, and out the back door into the cold. The night swallowed me whole. But my hand was still wrapped around those bills like they were the only warm thing I had left. I walked fast, not looking back, because if I looked back, I might turn around. And turning around was how you got caught. Turning around was how you got stuck. The streets didn't care that two men had been decent to me. The streets were still the streets. Hard sidewalks, hard faces, hunger that returned like a tide. But when I reached the gas station and bought a burrito and ate it standing under the fluorescent lights, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Not safety, not hope exactly, but the smallest proof that the world wasn't only cruel. And sometimes, when you're a runaway, that's enough to keep you walking. If you're a young person watching this and you're thinking about running away, or you've already left and you don't feel safe, please hear me. You deserve support, not punishment. If you're in the U.S., you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 24/7. If you're a runaway or homeless youth, you can also contact National Runaway Safeline at 1-800-RUNAWAY. That's 1-800-786-2929, or chat online. If you're in immediate danger, call 911. If you made it to the end, thank you for being here. These stories are from the kind of life people don't talk about, especially when they were too young to be living it. If you want more real, tense, true-to-life stories like this, please subscribe, hit like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.